Hello, and thanks for tuning in today to the Dell Networking Podcast for the PowerEdge MIO Aggregator for the M1000e Chassis. Today we're going to be talking about configurations on the IOA that can be done straight from the Chassis Management Controller's GUI. We're going to be making some adds and changes and edits to VLANs, updating and rolling back firmware, as well as going through some of the management settings for the IO Aggregator. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoy. We're going to start off today by first logging into the Chassis Management Controller. So I'm going to do that now. And as soon as we've logged in, we're going to go over here on the left down to the Module Overview page and take a look at what modules we actually have installed in the M1000e Chassis. You'll notice that up at the top, slots A1 and A2 both have the PowerEdge MIO Aggregator. So if we go up to the top here and click the Setup tab, we're going to get dumped into the Deploy section. Now we're going to get back to this in a minute, but this is where we would set IP addresses, maybe set some SNMP info, a syslog IP, and as well, this is where we can go in and reset the IO modules right back to factory defaults, which we're going to do at the end of the session today. And then in here we have the VLAN Manager tab, which we're going to come back into in just a minute to show you how to configure VLANs. Moving on up top, we have a Power tab that we can go in and look at. And inside the Power tab, you have the ability to power cycle one of the IO modules if you want to go ahead and power cycle it. So you can do that remotely. On the Troubleshooting tab, this is a section that you can go into, and if you want to set the identification light to blink, you can come in here and click on the little checkbox and then hit the blink button, and it's going to identify that IO module so that if you have somebody in a remote data center and you're trying to get them to find the exact chassis and IO module, you can set that to blink, and it's easier for a remote tech to go in and find that. So I'm going to unblink that, and then we're going to go over to the Update tab and take a look at what we can do for the IO aggregator from the Update page. Now in here we have some versions that you can already see. We're running 8.3.17.2 on our IO aggregators. And then we have the previous version that was installed before they were last updated, and that's a rollback version. So the first thing we're going to do is I want you to see the rollback feature. So I'm going to check both of those and simply say apply software updates. It's going to give us our warning message saying that they're going to have to be reset, which we are okay with. I'm going to say okay, and we're going to let those run. That's going to take a few minutes, and I won't make you sit through the whole thing. Okay, now that those have finished, you can say that they both say that they're ready. However, you notice the current version still says 8.3.17.2. I'm just going to go up here and hit the refresh button, and we're going to refresh this page. And now you notice once we refresh the page, the current version says 8.3.17.0, which is the same as the rollback version because that's the oldest version that we had on there. Now that we've rolled them back and you've got to see how that process works, let's go ahead and upgrade them. So we're going to upgrade both of them back to 8.3.17.2. And we can do this by simply saying update and clicking the little check boxes and then browsing out to where we have our image. So I'm going to browse all the way out to where I have the IO Aggregator firmware, which I've already downloaded right here. So I've browsed all the way out there, and I'm going to say apply software update. I'm going to get the warning message once again saying that it is going to reset the IO Aggregator, and we say OK. And it is being copied up from my computer right now. So that's going to take a few minutes. I won't make you sit through that. We'll go ahead and skip forward. All right, now that we've let that finish, you can look down here and notice that the status, the update status, says that it's ready. And we're going to go ahead and refresh the page. And you'll notice now that the current version says 8.3.17.2, And of course, we always have the capability to roll back once again to 8.3.17.0. So that's a pretty easy way to get the firmware updates done. You don't even need a TFTP server or anything like that, as long as you can browse over to where you have the file located. Next, we're going to go back up to the Setup tab and then over to the VLAN Manager, and we're going to play around with some VLANs. Now, when we get into the VLAN page, there's a couple sections I want you to take a look at. First is this VLAN assignment area, which is up near the top. Now, we've got a couple things in the VLAN assignment area, starting with what module we're working on. It defaults to the module in slot A1. Over here to the right, what ports we want to affect when we make changes to the VLANs. And then over on the right is our list of items that we can do. And as you can see, it's a very short list. It's only 5 different items. But before we start making any changes, we're going to scroll down and take a look at the summary of all the VLANs. Now, this summary of all VLANs of all ports is the global summary for all the VLANs that are configured on a particular I/O aggregator. Now, when you go down below, this is a more granular view of what VLANs are configured on a per port basis. And this shows you 2 separate columns. First, ports 1 through 16, and then over on the right, ports 17 through 32. And this shows you for modules A1 and A2. And then we have this save button, which we will get back to in a minute, which is really an export feature. But let's go ahead and make some changes here. Now, by default, all VLANs are allowed, and VLAN 1 is the default untagged VLAN for every single port. So you can see that there it says all VLANs, and 1 is the untagged VLAN. And that's the same for all 32 ports. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and change that. So starting with module A1, we're going to go ahead and select all the ports, and I'm going to select the ports for every single slot. So I'm just going to hit the select all button. And what I want to do is add tagged VLANs. Now, by default, all VLANs are allowed tagged. When you run this command, it's going to remove all of the VLANs that are pre-configured and only put the ones in that I want. I'm going to do VLANs 10, 20, 30, and 40. And I'm doing that for every port. So I simply come down here and hit apply. It's going to give me the message saying that it is going to take some time to complete, and that's okay. We scroll back down and you can see those little wheelie deals working. Those are going to take a few minutes, and when they're done, we'll go ahead and refresh the page. All right, I've now refreshed the page. I gave that a couple minutes to work. I've refreshed the page, and now you can see that on slots A1, VLANs 10, 20, 30, and 40 have been configured. VLAN 1 is still the untagged VLAN. And if we scroll down a little bit and take a look at the ports, you can see that that has been changed for ports 1 through 16, as well as ports 17 through 32. Next, we're going to go up and add some more tagged VLANs, but instead of doing it to all of the ports, we're going to selectively pick what slots we want to be effective. So still on module A1, I'm going to go over to step 2 here and configure the first range of ports and the second range of ports. But instead of doing all the slots, this time I'm going to select only the first 8 slots. Now, it doesn't matter if you have a server installed or not. You can still select the slots that you want. I'm going to add untagged VLANs. This time I'm going to add using a range command. So I'm going to add VLANs 100 through 105. Do that, scroll down and hit apply. And I'm getting the message saying that it's going to take a minute to complete. I can scroll down and I can see that once again, the module A1 has a VLAN update in progress. So we'll give that just a minute to finish, and then we'll refresh the page. All right, I've refreshed the page, and now you can see that we have added, for the first 8 slots, VLANs 100 through 105. And because we selected the first 16 ports and the last 16 ports, you'll notice that for slots 1 through 8, those VLANs have been added only to those particular slots. Slots 9 through 16 have not been affected. So our next item we're going to do is to change the untagged VLAN for a couple servers. And so say I want servers 1 and server 2 to have a different untagged VLAN than the rest of the servers so that they can communicate directly with each other. So what I could do is I can come in here, still working on module A1. I'm going to do both ranges of ports, and I'm just going to select the first 2 blade servers. And I'm going to come over here to the right, and I'm going to say, update the untagged VLANs. Now in this case, I want VLAN 200 to be the untagged VLAN for just those 2 servers. So I say VLAN 200, click apply, say OK to the warning message, and remind me once again that it's going to take a minute to complete. And if I scroll down, I can see once again I have a VLAN update in progress. So we'll give that just a minute and then refresh. All right, refresh has been done. If you look at the summary for the module itself, you'll notice that module A1 has untagged VLAN of 1 and 200. And the reason it has both is that we now have some ports using VLAN 200 as the untagged VLAN, which is the first 2 slots, and then some of the interfaces are still using VLAN 1 as the untagged VLAN. So you can see how quick and easy it was to change the untagged VLAN there. Now, next thing we're going to do is create our redundant configuration. If we scroll down, you'll notice that the ports for the I/O aggregator in slot A2 are still all set to the normal default. They're set to all VLANs using 1 as the untagged. Now, I've got all my configuration done for the first IOA module. Now I want to copy that configuration over to A2. So rather than having to do all of it by hand, I can come up here, click on this little drop down. Oops, I'm sorry. First select the module you want to copy to, select the drop down, say copy A1 configuration. What this is going to do is copy the configuration from A1 to A2. So all the VLANs will be the same when it's complete. You don't have to do anything else except click apply, say OK. And then when we scroll down, you're going to notice that a VLAN update is in progress for both modules. Now it's doing quite a bit of VLAN changes to the module in A2, so it's going to take a minute. We're going to let that finish, and then we'll refresh the page. All right, those little wheelie deals have stopped working, and so I'm going to scroll up to the top, click the refresh button right here, and the page is going to refresh, and I'm going to scroll back down, and you can now see that for all the ports on A1 and all of the ports on the module in A2, the VLAN configurations are exactly the same for all the ports. So that was a very quick and easy way to replicate the VLAN configuration from A1 to A2. One other thing I want to show you is the save feature. Now the save button, the name save is a slightly misleading. Probably be better if it said export. However, let me show you what it does. When I click save, it's going to create a CSV file. So I can open it or I can save it. However, I'm going to go ahead and save that file. And now I'm going to go ahead and open the file. And Excel is my default program for that. And you can see my VLAN configuration for both A1 and A2. I have all of my interfaces listed, all of the VLANs, all the VLAN configuration straight out of the I/O aggregators has now been exported in a very easy to read CSV file. So that's what the save button does. It exports the VLAN configuration straight off of the I/O aggregators. One last item I'd like to show you on VLAN configurations is how to set the VLANs back to how they came as default, which is all VLANs with VLAN 1 being the untagged for all interfaces. So I'm going to do this on module A1. I'm going to go ahead and select everything. And I'm going to come over here and just say reset to all VLANs. And once I've done that, you notice this area grays out, so I can't even type anything in there. I'm going to scroll down and hit apply. Say OK. Say OK. And down here you notice that the VLAN update is in progress. So while that update is in progress, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on A2. So A2, select all slots and all ports, and say reset to all VLANs. And go ahead and hit apply on number 2 as well. Now those are both going to be working, so I'll let those finish, and then we'll go ahead and refresh the page. All right, now that it's done working, let's go up to the top, hit refresh, and then we can scroll back down and take a look, and we notice that both modules, as well as all the interfaces for those modules, have been reset back to all VLANs with 1 as the default untagged. So that's a quick, easy way to get it back to the configuration that it starts out in. Okay, next we're going to go out to the setup and then deploy page. Now we looked at the deploy page briefly earlier, but what we're going to do with the deploy page now is actually go in and change some of the default settings on the switch. Now these are management type settings. This is where we could set static IP addresses, syslog IPs, SNMP strings, things like that. What we're going to do right now is turn off DHCP for both of the I/O aggregators. And I'm going to set static IP addresses, which I already have figured out what IPs I'm going to use. And I'm going to go ahead and set that on both of these. I'm just going to copy that guy over, change that. And then we're going to set our subnet mask. For both of those. And of course, our default gateway. And I'll go ahead and set that the same for both of those as well. I'm not going to change anything else right now, but if I wanted to change the password for the user root, I could go in and change that as well. The default is Calvin, just like it is on the chassis management controller, but I can go in and change that as well. Now, likewise, if I want to add additional users, I can do that via the command line interface for the I/O aggregator. But if I just want to go in and change the default behavior of root Calvin, I can change it to be username root with a totally different password. I can set an SNMP read-only string if you want to use some SNMP to pull traps off of the I/O aggregator. You could do that as well. If you want to start sending syslog messages out to a syslog server, this is where you would go in and add a syslog server IP. But now that I've changed my IP addresses, I'm going to simply go over here and hit apply. And it's going to take just a minute for this to finish up. And when I'm done, I will refresh the page and we'll be able to see that. Now it looks like it's completed. However, you notice that DHCP is still checked and all the addresses that I just got done entering seem to have disappeared, and it just is filled in with all zeros. But not to fear, I'm going to hit the refresh button up here, and as soon as the page actually refreshes, you can see all the new settings that I just got done entering. And with that, you've configured the IP addresses so that you can access the I/O aggregators directly via SSH and get in them to manage them. So let's do a quick recap. We've gone in and looked at the properties, which basically tells us what modules are installed. It tells us what the service tags are. We went into the setup tab. We both looked at the IP settings and the management settings for the I/O aggregators. We went over to the VLAN manager tab and did a whole bunch of VLAN configurations. We also went over into the update page, and we were updating and rolling back firmware, so you got to see how we do that. The last thing I want to show you how to do is back in the Setup tab. Let's just say you want to factory reset one of your I/O aggregators all the way back to factory defaults, as if you had just got it straight from Dell. You can do that on this page by simply using the factory reset button. So I'm going to hit that. It's going to pop up and say, you know what? Just warning you, we're going to reset this all the way back to factory default. Are you sure you want to do that? It's going to reset the I/O module. You say, okay, and that is going to take a few minutes, but it's going to completely wipe out the configuration on that. It's going to set it back to factory defaults using DHCP. It's going to reset all the VLANs, everything. That'll be completely done. Now that we're done letting that work for a second, I'm going to hit the refresh button. And when the page refreshes, you can see now that the module in slot A1 has been completely reset back to factory defaults. And with that, you've gone through the basic process of making changes and configurations on the I/O aggregators straight out of the chassis management controller without ever having to individually log in to an I/O aggregator. Thanks so much for watching. Have an excellent day.